The high-speed debauchery of street racing, an illegal activity that requires pinpoint accuracy. Except, what if we made this high-octane guzzling activity a slow-paced, methodical JRPG? Now, I know what you're thinking. What kind of idiot would turn this precise activity into something so slow, debatably boring even? Well, Sammy Studios for the Game Boy Advance did. They took one of the most popular racing manga/anime during the time and turned it into a turn-based game. Initial D is one of the premier racing animes, and it's still beloved to this day. Heck, I've had a random coworker mention loving Initial D not too long ago. Just goes to show the impact it's had since its inception in 1995 by Shuichi Shiano. I'm not going to give you a deep dive on what Initial D is, since part of me wants to do a retrospective of all the arcade games someday if I have the chance. If you'd like to see that, feel free to let me know in the comments. Heck, I haven't even played some of them and I can't find any information on what the differences are in the physics for Arcade Stage 6AA and Arcade Stage 7AAX, which are double aces and double aces cross respectively. I'm also hearing that 8 Infinity is just a third iteration of the 3. I could just skip 6 and 7 and go straight to 8, I guess? Anyways, I guess I'll just have to try that out for myself and report back, as Google is no help on this matter. Alright, back to the game at hand. Here on the mountaintops of Japan, you can select from a select few cars from the anime's first season. Not only that, but this game goes beyond first stage and has you racing against second stage racer Sudo Kyoichi after you take down the infamous Red Sun's second best racer. If you're already familiar with Initial D, then you're probably getting vibes that this game doesn't follow the anime/manga story of events. And you'd be right, you played a part as a newbie who just joined the gas station the series protagonist Takumi Fujiwara works at. You gotta make a name for yourself by starting from the bottom. During the day, you chat with your coworkers about life, and you can even ask about your boss, Yoroichi, to even upgrade your car. And when the sun sets and it's nighttime, it's off to the mountain path, or Toge if you're a weeb. You collect the phone numbers of everyone you meet and you can message them to schedule a race to level yourself up and gain points to buy upgrades. Your first race is against our beloved lonely driver himself, Ikitani. The game is pretty simple. You mash to rev up your engine before the start of the race. If you redline, you'll damage your tires at launch. This game is heavily stat based, but it's also important to position your car for specific actions to be available. Under the parameter bar on the bottom right are your current stats. Different actions will deplete your tires and brakes and your spirit gauge. The first two are self-explanatory, but the spirit gauge? Like, what in the world even is that? Are we gonna bust out some JRPG magic attacks? Well, not exactly, but you technically have special moves if you want to consider them so. You can just see your spirit gauge as your confidence gauge. Before we go on a deep dive with your different techniques, let's go over basic movement. There's a limit gauge, which is the time limit for you to make decisions. Different interactions have different time limits, and different areas have differing time limits. For example, when you're in an S-curve or a multi-corner section, the time limit is often only 1 second long to position your car. You can move left and right to take up different positions on screen, but obviously a lane may be occupied by the opponent if you're both neck to neck with one another. If you're in the lead, you can either take a line to block your opponent's options or make a plan based around your resources. If you're chasing your opponent, the line they take will affect the options you have, and staying true to its RPG nature, you don't have every skill available to you in the beginning. As you progress through the game, different characters will give you new techniques related to iconic moments in the show. For example, beating Keisuke Takahashi will give you the iconic inertia drift, Mako and Sayuki will give you the feint motion, and talking to Takumi at the gas station will give you tips on the gutter technique. Okay, let's get into how to utilize your techniques. When you're going towards a corner, you'll have several options. Things such as removing your foot off the accelerator, which has little effect on your stats, gives you tons of speed, but is only viable if you look at the bottom left corner map and see a wide angle. Obviously, the sharper the turn, the more you need to utilize your brakes. While it'll give you the edge to pass an opponent you're chasing from behind by letting you pass them, you may enter the corner a little too fast, causing you to be overtaken mid-turn. Other options available are Gentle Brake, which does minimal damage to your tires and brake and is an overall solid option. Early Brake, which brakes early, takes minimal resources, but your opponent can easily surpass you if you're not blocking them when using this maneuver. You see where I'm getting at with the depth of strategy in this game, right? It's all about trying to simulate a street race while managing your resources. You have your Late Brake, which gives you a ton of speed to pass an opponent when entering a corner, but does massive damage to your resources. Use it sparingly, or you'll be out of stats and your maneuvers will begin to have a high chance at failing. Now that we've gone over some of the basic entry options, what sort of techniques do we have? Well, you have the basic grip technique, such as the also common racing line of out and out, turning late at the apex of a turn, and an aggressive turn. All these take different amounts of tires and brakes and are useful depending on the type of corner and the position between you and your opponent. The aggressive turn is pretty expensive, but it's useful when trying to overtake an opponent that's not drifting. Drifting tends to block both lanes, making it kinda difficult to pass, but we'll get more into that in a bit. Out and out uses minimal resources, but does a good job of blocking the opponent if they're behind you. Everything I've mentioned so far are simply the fundamentals and seldom use any of your spirit gauge. When you've learned some magnificent techniques, it's time to make use of your spirit gauge. You have the basic drift, which helps you block your opponent on the sharper turns and burns an okay amount of your gauges. If the turn isn't as tight, the zero counter drift, which could also be called slip angle since it's a high speed drift where you don't really counter steer at all. It takes the least amount of resources and is one of the most powerful skills in the game with how useful it is with such a low cost. Its weakness? Well, you'll lose the lead and fail if you try this in a sharper corner. You have the side brake or E-brake drift, which drains your resources hard but will save you if you do the minimal amount of braking before entering a corner to make sure you pass your opponent upon entry. Positioning matters a ton in this game. Certain techniques like the feint motion can only be done when entering from the inside lane. If you and your opponent are neck and neck, your drift can be blocked and will cause your spirit gauge to drain even further. The gutter run can only be done if your opponent isn't blocking the gutters, so make sure you're either on the inside or drastically behind them to have room to initiate this. Trust me, a failed gutter run drains half your spirit gauge and will basically cost you the race. Why does this technique have such a high risk? Well, it's simple. The reward is insane. It basically guarantees you to pass on by a drifting opponent blocking your overtake. It's basically a guaranteed way to pass through all of your opponent's options. There are actually two different gutter techniques in this game, one for a stronger entry and another for a faster exit out of a corner. I'm not going to cover every single technique in this game, but that's about the gist of it. All of this happens as you race through Mount Akino before being challenged by Mako and Sayuki, and they get you to race outside of your comfort zone. You make your way onto Myogi, Akagi, and Irohazaka by the end of the game. When you finally defeat Ryosuke Takahashi, your final battle in the story is the protagonist of Initial D himself, Takumi Fujiwara. Once you crush his Stone Age tofu delivering hatchback and the credits roll, you also unlock the ability to race against Bunta in the free race battle. Honestly, you can beat this game in less than 2 hours if you're good. It's not a particularly difficult game either. The only barrier to entry is not really knowing about racing and drifting terminology and theory to make the fastest decisions in a race. And as you can see, this game is a Japan exclusive with no English translation available. And the biggest downside of all, oh I hate to say this, but there is absolutely zero Eurobeat in this tiny GBA cartridge of a game. If you can get past those barriers, this is an incredibly unique game with literally nothing else quite like it, and because of that, I highly recommend checking it out if you can.